You know how some stories begin with a feeling, a whisper of something just a little bit off? This one starts with a splash of sun on a kitchen table, the scent of fresh coffee, and the bright, almost impossibly cheerful squawk of a parrot named Polly. Polly wasn't just any parrot. She was a riot of emerald green and sapphire blue, a beacon of tropical vibrancy in our otherwise quiet suburban home. We, the Millers, that's Sarah, my perpetually optimistic wife, Leo, our 9-year-old whose curiosity knew no bounds, and myself, Mark, ever the pragmatist, had acquired Polly from a rather eccentric pet shop owner who swore she was a genius. "She just repeats what she hears," he chirped, a perfect echo. And for the first few weeks, that's exactly what she was. "Good morning, sunshine," she'd declare, mimicking Sarah's bright morning greeting. "More toast, please," she'd squawk after Leo's persistent requests. She was a delightful, albeit noisy, addition to our lives, a living, feathered tape recorder of our everyday existence. Then, one crisp Tuesday morning, as Sarah was humming along to a radio tune while buttering toast, Polly's voice cut through the domestic peace. "Don't trust the man in the kitchen," she announced, her tone a perfect, unsettling mimicry of a low, conspiratorial whisper. Sarah froze, the butter knife suspended in midair. I glanced up from my newspaper, a frown already forming. "Polly, what was that?" I asked, my voice calm, though a tiny prickle of unease had already begun. Leo, ever the literalist, looked around the empty kitchen. "There's no man here, Polly, just Daddy." We laughed it off, of course. Perhaps a neighbor had been listening to a particularly dramatic podcast, or a snippet of an old movie had drifted in through an open window. The pet shop owner had said she just repeated what she heard, right? It was a curious anomaly, nothing more. We told ourselves that. But the anomalies began to accumulate. A week later, as a small fire alarm malfunctioned in the basement, filling the air with that shrill, piercing shriek before it was quickly silenced, Polly suddenly screeched, "The fire wasn't an accident!" Her voice, usually so bright, held an uncanny edge of something sinister. This time, there was no easy laughter. Sarah's face paled, and Leo clutched my arm, his eyes wide. "Polly, where did you hear that?" Leo whispered, his innocent voice laced with genuine fear. Polly just tilted her head, her bright, intelligent eyes blinking, offering no explanation beyond the unsettling echo. The atmosphere in our home began to shift subtly. The once charming squawks now carried an undertone of apprehension. Every time Polly spoke, we'd listen, not with amusement, but with a growing dread. She started saying things like, "He knows where the money is hidden," or "She didn't suffer long." Each phrase was delivered with the dispassionate clarity of a recording, yet each one chipped away at our sense of safety, our sense of the world making sense. We checked our home for hidden cameras, for listening devices. We asked neighbors if they'd heard anything unusual, if they recognized any of Polly's bizarre pronouncements. Nothing, absolutely nothing. It was as if Polly was pulling these phrases from the very fabric of the air, from unseen currents of past conversations, or worse, from events yet to unfold. We considered taking her back, selling her, anything to rid ourselves of this feathered oracle of doom. But then a strange attachment had formed, mingled with a morbid fascination. We found ourselves compelled to listen, a perverse curiosity overriding our fear. Was Polly truly just repeating things, or was she sensing them? Was she a conduit for something beyond our comprehension, a living receiver of echoes from other places, other times? The thought was chilling. One quiet evening, the kind where only the hum of the refrigerator and the gentle tick of the antique clock usually punctuate the silence, Leo was absorbed in a book, Sarah was knitting by the lamp, and I was trying, unsuccessfully, to focus on a crossword puzzle. Polly had been unusually quiet all day, perhaps sensing the growing tension that hung like a heavy shroud over our little family. Suddenly, without warning, Polly let out a sound so utterly chilling, so profoundly unnatural, it stopped our hearts. It wasn't a squawk, or a word, or a phrase. It was a scream, a full-throated, ragged, desperate human scream. It was short, sharp, and cut off abruptly, as if the breath had been stolen mid-cry. The sound resonated in the quiet room, echoing in the sudden, absolute silence that followed. Sarah dropped her knitting, the needles clattering on the hardwood floor. Leo let out a small, terrified whimper, his face buried in the pages of his book. And I felt a cold knot of ice form in my stomach. We knew, instinctively, in the deepest part of our beings, that Polly had never heard that scream before. Not in this house, not from us. It was a scream that belonged to someone else, somewhere else. And yet somehow, Polly had heard it. The silence that followed was suffocating. It was the silence of anticipation, of a terrible, unspoken question hanging in the air. If Polly had just echoed a scream she hadn't yet heard, then when would we hear it for ourselves? The gentle hum of the refrigerator, the tick of the clock, the very air in our home now seemed to hold a sinister promise. Polly sat on her perch, still as a statue, her bright eyes glinting, a dark echo awaiting its origin. The days that followed were lived on edge, a constant state of quiet vigilance. Every creak of the house, every rustle of leaves outside the window, every unexpected sound became a source of dread. We'd moved Polly's cage to a quieter part of the house, away from the living areas, not out of cruelty, but out of a desperate need for peace, for a moment of silence unbroken by her foreboding whispers. Yet even in the quiet, her echoed scream lingered, a chilling premonition that still hangs over our family. It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about the unseen currents that flow around us, the echoes that precede their source, the warnings that arrive before the storm. Polly, our beautiful, unsettling Polly, remains a living mystery, a constant reminder that some echoes aren't from the past, but from a future that is, perhaps, already here. What do you make of Polly's dark echoes? Have you ever encountered a warning that seemed to come from nowhere, only to find its truth later? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. And if you found yourself caught in the unsettling world of Polly's predictions, please consider following for more stories that linger long after they're told.